There was also another translation. I want to briefly. This is number 179. The title of this is A Song Sung When the Garlok armies attacked in India. This is an event that was reported in Tibet during the time of Kyoba Rinpoche. So the Garlok armies is referring to a Turkic group that attacked India in the 12th century. And so a lot of monasteries, alongside with many other things, were destroyed in India. And so reports of this army, this invading force threatening India, reached Tibet. In part, some of the escaping refugees, monks, hearing that Tibet is friendly to Buddhism, so they headed across the Himalayas into Tibet, so bringing news of this attack. So it is said that in hearing about this attack, Kyoba Rinpoche wrote this song. Thematically, basically, Kyoba Rinpoche divided this song into 3 parts. And it's related to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So in a way, with the invading force in India, the sense is that Buddhism is under threat, and the most precious thing in Buddhism is Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? So, of course, the reports that come carry stories of how buildings are destroyed, statues are destroyed, texts are destroyed, human lives are destroyed, and so on and so forth. But again, you see how Kyoba Rinpoche uses this as an occasion to direct our attention to true meaning of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so in the face of suffering, in the face of difficulties, what we should think of. The translators, when we discussed about what to translate, noticed this particular title, and they looked into it, and they say, oh, this might be good for our times, even though there are no necessarily invading armies, but these are difficult times, so there might be some resonance here. So this is mostly don't need much editing, but let me read it. Yeah? It says, though the Muni, meaning Shakyamuni, and the Muni means like the sage, though the Muni, our protector, and the gurus have taught, all appearance and existence is the Dharmakaya, and co-emergent with it are exalted qualities and activities, unquote. So though the Buddha and the gurus have taught this, it is reasonable to ask, alas, what is to be done? When we suffer from the abuses of a million forms of distress, pain, and hurt, a mind obscured by the darkness of wrong views and ignorance is certain to have arisen from the belief in the self, and thus dream bees pollinate sky flowers. I like this a lot. Dream bees pollinate sky flowers. Sky flowers is a very common Buddhist expression to talk about the things that we imagine to exist, and then the stories and the commitments and the investments and the whole drama that we then invest in and ensues from these, ultimately unreal things. Flowers in the sky, meaning due to a disease of the eye, you see like things like cataracts is that disease usually. You see kind of objects floating in the air and you might think, oh, those are flowers, you know. Even if flowers, so here has a connotation of they're attractive, you know. Yeah. Otherwise you'll see like maybe giant spiders, you know, in the sky. And those are like, ah. So here especially it's saying, you know, in a delusional way we think, you know, oh, flowers in the sky, and not realizing that they are the result of this illness. So it says here, you know, a mind obscured by the darkness of wrong views and ignorance is certain to have arisen from the belief in the self, and thus dream bees pollinate sky flowers. And because of that, you know, all these sky flowers, as we are obscured by the mountains of the three obscurations, how could we ever perceive the three kayas of the Buddhas? So here it's like, you know, what are the Buddhas? The Buddhas are the three kayas. And they're not the statues, they're not the stupas, you know, they're not the tankas. Now, don't misunderstand, you know, as I mentioned in the past, Kyoba Rinpoche spent a lot of his resources, offerings given to him, to hire craftsmen to come from Nepal, to build statues, to craft, to sculpt statues, stupas, and so on and so forth. So that's important to do for the sake of generating mass amounts of merit for the benefit of all beings. But nonetheless, the actual Buddhas are the three kayas. Next, even though the gurus and Buddhas have taught that, quote, the Buddha's teachings shall never fade. It is in the domain of the lasting, blissful, and unchanging, unquote. In this current day and age, great peril abounds. The power of foul beings flourishes and cannot be turned back. The garlands of flowers of the three trainings are wilting. Beings with the three wisdoms are few and far between. Ignorant beings like myself are carried away by worldly ways, and so-called yogis intoxicate themselves with sense pleasures and drink. Alas, woe is me! Where is the Buddha's teachings to be found? The victor's teachings are a boat with which to cross the ocean of cyclic existence. Yet the crocodiles of sense pleasures have us by our necks. When will we ever reach the dry shore of nirvana beyond sorrow? Endeavor in practice with great diligence, my dear sons. So it says, you know, Dharma is disappearing. It is under threat. But more importantly, it's not so much that people are burning Dharma texts. That is the real problem. Of course, that should not happen. We wish that not to happen. But more threatening than Dharma texts being destroyed is how those who hold these teachings don't put them into practice. And instead, it says, in this ocean, crocodiles of sense pleasures have us by our necks. Finished. The third one, so the second, this one is about Dharma. Then Sangha. The Lord of Sages, the blessed Bhagavan, has taught, all, quote, all sentient beings are fully pacified. The jewel of the Sangha will never cease, as it is equal with the likes of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and has exhausted defilements and abandoned birth and death, unquote. The truth of these words is of an unsurpassed certainty. Yet if one does not extract the essence of the teachings through practice, if you do not refine these teachings through practice, through taking into your own experience, how then is it that us samsaric beings are to be liberated? Be without attachment to your life, which is like a blistering wound, and engage in practice just as the victor has taught. And that will be the true Sangha. It's when we become that Sangha. But instead, if we are, fixated on short-term benefits, short-term pleasures, short-term conditions, and become reliant on them, it's just a matter of time when those conditions cannot be controlled by us anymore. Then what? Then we become miserable. Then we suffer. Better to not put your trust in conditions that, even if now they are under our control, they will not always be under our control. And they cannot be under our control because they are dependently arising. Many factors are involved. How can you control all of them? So at the birthday celebration of one of the teachers who have been very kind to Urban Dharma, Venerable Wayu in Malaysia, I remember him saying when they were celebrating his birthday, big party, his talk, he said, he said that my health is okay. At one point his health wasn't too good, but he says, now my health is okay. He says, small ailments, colds, sniffles, little things, indigestion. He says, comes and goes. Not much of an issue. So he says, small illnesses, small ailments come and go, like anyone else, no issue. Big ailments, he said, not here yet. And he emphasized, yet. He says, that will come. Yeah, so that's really important that all of us remember, just not here yet. So yes, we do what we can to try and hope and pray, to try to hope and pray and diet and exercise and all of that. Yes, to hope that the big ones don't come. But don't put all your trust in just that, You should rather also develop, we should rather also develop the ability to handle when the big ones come, which inevitably they will come. Yeah. So this song, another, I really like this, crocodile by our necks, and pollinating, dream bees pollinating sky flowers. Pledges to continue the translation are coming in. As I said, it's open-ended. Sometimes I get a message, is it still needed? I said, well, in the big picture, yes, it's needed. But right now, the pledges and what you have given exceeds what the translators can do, time limit. So from that perspective, yes, it's enough already. Then from the perspective of, finishing over 300 titles, well, then we have a long way to go. So I said, depends on how you look at it, But bottom line is no pressures, No one should feel like, there's a pressure, to get this done. No, don't. But then, of course, we continue to explore this next step in this project, which is the publication of these translations in a volume. And as I said, I don't want to print cheaply produced and low quality. There's too much of these books being printed for free distribution. And if you are anywhere in Asia, anywhere near temples, and I can tell you every temple dreads, when somebody drops off a box of basilin things that they have collected because it's free, especially, or sold cheaply. That's the problem, you know. Now you have trash related to Dharma. What are you going to do with them? And temples and Buddhist centers dread it, you know, when people come with boxes and boxes of free material, and often, you know, printed and circulated too freely. So that's the downside, you know. So I don't want to produce something like that. I was like, you know, I would rather not, you know, print them out because we cannot justify, you know, the killing of trees by producing things that books that people are not going to read, people are not going to cherish. And part of people not reading, not cherishing, you know. If you know the contents, if you have a personal connection to the contents, then of course it doesn't matter, right? How well designed, how well printed, how well published it is, because it's the content that matters for sure, you know. Hence, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. But at the same time, you can sort of judge a book by its cover if you have no idea about what the content is, and you can say, you know, like the care and that is taken to produce the physical book often reflects, you know, how precious the content is. Unfortunately, that's how we look at things. And so if we produce this volume in a very kind of hurried and careless way, then we are doing a disservice, because people with just not much yet connection to Kyopa Rinpoche's traditions and Kyopa Rinpoche's teachings, and therefore have no basis, right, to really judge, you know, what the content is, then they're going to judge it by its cover. Then they're not even going to look at it, right? And so then we have a duty to make sure we don't create those circumstances. So that is a secondary, as in we're not reached the point yet where we are going to be producing the hard copies. But anyway, dedicate your practice, your prayers to this project continuing nicely. In the most immediate is to reconnect or to connect with a good source in terms of consultants for the translators. And then we keep moving with this project. So yes, so anyway, as I was saying, I continue to receive messages from different people within this group, outside of this group, saying, oh, I would like to sponsor. And I say, yes, sure. You know, I'm keeping track of a document of who has committed what amount and who has paid. No, confession, that would be lying. I don't keep track of who has paid. I've only kept track of who has committed. And I'm assuming if you have committed, you have either paid or you will at some point pay. Doesn't matter. So I just keep track of who has committed how many pages. And so I have that document. It's not for me to really to keep track of who has paid or who has not paid. I have to happily accept that once you have committed, then you have done, you have paid. I'm not the landlord, you know, chasing after rent or tax collector, you know. So Gongchik, yeah, 2021, 22, as I said, superficially, right? This on the on the surface level looks as if Kyopa Rinpoche was concerned about labels, about qualifications, about credentials, right? Are you Buddhist or not Buddhist? Are you Hinayana or Mahayana? Are you general Mahayana or are you special Mahayana like us Vajrayana people, right? Superficially, it might seem as if, you know, like he is concerned with these things. And I have to say, often like when Buddhist teachers, when Khenpos or Geshes teach this, there's sometimes a sense of like, the concern is about whether you belong or you don't belong, whether you are in the special club or not, and then listing out all the reasons, all the qualifications, all the credentials you need to have before you are part of the club or not. But I think, Kyoba Rinpoche's concern is really not about this. And I would say, none of the great masters, when they discuss this matter, is really intending that discussion to be about membership in some special club and feeling good that, oh, I am this and you are that, and I'm already this, you're not there yet. They're not concerned about this. But again, we can inadvertently turn Dharma into something like this if we do not know how to learn and to practice the Dharma. So it is so important that we keep refining. If we keep refining our intentions, our sincerity, we keep polishing our motivation. That is really important. Then once we get that right, then you can pick up any Buddhist teaching and you will know what to do with it. If you don't get that intention, that clarity, that sincerity, on the one hand sincerity, on the other hand clarity. If you're very sincere and you don't work on clear understanding, it's also not so good. You could be sincerely deluded. So you also want to develop clarity. But if you have so much clarity, but then it has become a point of pride, and sincerity is gone, you're just trying to be more clever and more clever and more clever, then also useless, So the two things, developing sincerity and clear understanding. So why we are even studying, all these statements is, I think in the end, to develop these two. And when it comes to developing these two, then the statements are fingers pointing to the moon. Yeah? Unless you have, the skills and the gifts of teaching this, of transmitting this, then you need to learn the details. But if that's not what it is for you, then don't get too caught up in too much of the details, especially in the beginning. You'll become really overwhelmed. So when you find yourself getting too narrow into some of the details, if it feels tight, move out a little and say, wait, what is the main point here? First, make sure you understand that you get that. And if you get that, then you say, now I want to sharpen my clarity and understanding. Then you can go into very detail. But don't let the going into details, kind of make it really tight. You need to zoom back out and say, what's the bigger point? What's the take-home lesson? As that phrase, what is the take-home lesson? What do I apply from this? Yeah. So these three statements, I think is so important because it seems to be about establishing the credentials of whether you belong or you don't belong. Therefore, it can easily become some sort of labeling, branding, or even sectarianing. It's not a word, but I've turned it into a word, sectarianing. It should not be that, And also bigger point, whenever I talk about Kagyupa, Oh, Kagyupa is like this, Kagyupa is like that. Again, it's not so that we can turn it into a brand, a label, that we then feel like, oh, I'm in this club, you are not in this club. But it's to help us to appreciate what we are now connected to, and appreciate that connection. And you might have many other connections, and that's entirely fine, because that's your particular karmic causes and conditions. Then with regards to all the other connections that you have, you appreciate, you learn the special flavor of each of those connections. What is the Dzogchen way? What is the Chonangpa way? What is the Gelugpa way? What is the Sakyapa way? What is the Soto Zen way? What is the Vipassana, Goenka Vipassana way? And so on and so forth. If you are, if you have all those connections, whenever you are here, hearing, oh, Kagyupa this, Kagyupa that, and more specifically, Drigung this, Kyopa Rinpoche that, it is not to be taken in the, kind of the spirit of like, oh, this is bestest, this is, then the rest are like, that's somebody else, they're wrong. It's not that, it's not in that spirit at all. Even if, to bring into focus and to contrast, to sharpen the focus of what we're looking at, we will say, Gelugpas, they think this, or Sakyapas, or Sakya Pandita, especially Sakya Pandita with Gongchik, But this is not, like Sakya Pandita is wrong. And we are right, or our master is right. No, it's just to bring into focus more clearly what is being emphasized here. Yeah. So likewise, when the statement talks about difference between Buddhist and non-Buddhist, difference between Hinayana and Mahayana, difference between Paramita yana and secret mantra yana, and this is not about labels. So the line between Buddhist and non-Buddhist, and I like it that the statement right before this tells us, first, with regards to the question of non-Buddhists, so to say, meaning those who are not Nangpa, right? Those who are not followers of the inner way, the Buddhist way, the inner way. 19 says, now, even among those, they have many practices that are valid and good. Why? Because, as the Dalai Lama would say it, these core universal human values is not the exclusive property of Buddhists. Love and compassion. I mean, anybody and everybody can see the advantages and therefore can feel those emotions purely with or without being Buddhist. And when it comes to that, then it says we have a lot to appreciate and to see and to learn, even from non-Buddhist. So it's within that context that then now it says, but then if we are going to talk about whether you have entered the path or not, the inner path, so that would be my, I think, instead of non-Buddhist and Buddhist, but of course, you have to use simpler words, non-Buddhist and Buddhist. But really the issue is, if you want to know whether you have entered the path that the Buddha taught or not, or are you just borrowing tools from this path for a different path? So that's one way of looking at it, right? If you're just borrowing some of the tools that are provided in this particular path for this particular journey, to go enhance your path and your journey to a different destination, right? You should know that, But if you are interested in the journey and the path that leads to the goal that the Buddha taught for, then it says, you need to see, are you taking refuge or not taking refuge? So even, even in this context, even having right view, such as like the four seals, right? All compounded things are impermanent. All afflicted states entail pain or are painful, period. Not entail, but are painful, are suffering. All phenomena, whether compounded or non-compounded, are without self, without essence. And nirvana is complete, beyond all categories. Nirvana is tranquil. Nirvana is quiet. Nirvana is peace, meaning nirvana is beyond all concepts. Even if you accept these four, according to Gyoba here, you are not yet on the path. You are very well equipped now to be on the path, but until you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you are not yet Buddhist. You are not yet a follower of the inner way. So Sobich provides the four seals at the bottom of page 129. Everything conditioned is impermanent. Everything contaminated is unsatisfying. Unsatisfying is his choice for duknyao. Duknyao is dukkha. Dukkha is dissatisfaction, suffering, pain, disease, etc., etc. All phenomena are without self. Chotamche dakpame. Nirvana is peace. Here, Sobich points out that in the commentaries, it says, it seems to be, from Sobich's opinion, that this statement is trying to say that if we use these four as the defining definition of a Buddhist, then it is too demanding. So it says, it is immediately clear that this is a demanding definition, and it would be an exaggeration to say that all Buddhists hold or even understand these four seals. So then, examples are given of how some Buddhists may or may not accept this, and therefore, if we use this as a standard, then they will be excluded. In my opinion, I think this is not so important. I prefer the looking of it as, like, for me, the take-home lesson is not so much that. For me, the take-home lesson is you can, intellectually entertain those statements and say, oh, yes, I believe. But until you're going to do something about it, and actually take it into experience, and that is called taking refuge. This is all just wah, 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 lots of sound bites. Yeah. And to me, that's the take-home lesson. Then the difference between Hinayana and Mahayana is the cultivation of the resolve. And this is a very specific wording, to cultivate the resolve. The resolve to achieve Buddha for the sake of all. When you actually cultivate that resolve, that is when you are on the Mahayana path. So this statement is given in contrast to what? In contrast to the differences between the great and the lower vehicle are such things as the 37 factors of awakening and the 6 perfections. Therefore, people claim that these are the differences in the paths to be followed. So here Kyopa Rinpoche said that the general view is that the Hinayana, the lower vehicle, they don't have the 37 factors of awakening, and they don't have the 6 paramitas. Whereas in the great vehicle, they have the 37 factors of awakening. Yeah, and they have the 6 perfections. But here, Kyopa Rinpoche says, no, that's not where the bottom line is. And so let's look at the commentary. It says, Chodra's commentary says, the demarcation between Hinayana and Mahayana is not something, again here as a matter of style, but I think also related to a subtle point, but important point. If I were the one writing and publishing this, I would keep Hinayana and Mahayana without caps. In English, when you cap it as Hinayana, Mahayana, it suggests that these are kind of groups, identifier labels for specific groups of people. Then it's liable to give the impression, that we're talking about existing Buddhist groups. I would rather keep it in, lower caps, Then the understanding is like, it's a matter, Hinayana and Mahayana again is not, oh, you have Avalokiteshvara, oh, you must be Mahayana. Oh, you only venerate the Arhats, oh, you must be Hinayana. No, it has nothing to do with that, That's the point here, it's nothing to do with those things. Yeah? Anyway, the demarcation between Hinayana and Mahayana is not something like cause, path, and result, or whether one accepts both of the absences of the self. So then there are some arguments too, that whereas Hinayana systems of philosophy only teach the selflessness of persons, Mahayana philosophical traditions emphasize the importance of realizing not only the absence of a self with regards to persons, but the absence of self with regards to phenomena. Yes, you will find in the Abhidharmas, in the commentaries, this way of saying who is Hinayana, who is Mahayana. But again, Kyopa Rinpoche says, no, that's not it. Then there are also those who will say, Hinayana people, they understand the cause to be like this, the path to be like this, and the result to be like this. Mahayana people, they understand the cause or the ground to be like this, the path to be like this, the result to be like this. Again, for sure, you're going to encounter. And that's actually very common. Especially, I think, like in the way Trungpa Rinpoche teaches about the Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana in the Shambhala, and further elaborated in the Shambhala system. It has created, I think, this or not created, it has solidified this one attitude towards the 3 yanas, as if there were 3 possibilities to get to 3 different places, or sometimes the same place. More often 3 different places. That the 3 yanas are 3 different modes of transportation to 3 different places. And that if you start with Hinayana, with the goal of arriving at Vajrayana, you should just pretend to entertain the first destination, knowing that that's not actually where you want to go. But because of your ability now, you have to start here. Then at some point, you have to switch buses. You have to transfer bus to get to that goes to the place that you really want to go. Then at some point, you have to transfer again to finally get to where you're going to get to. There's that explanation. But here, Kyopa Rinpoche He doesn't look at it this way. Yeah. Here he says to the commentary, one makes the differentiation based solely on whether someone possesses the resolve for awakening. So he quotes Mahayana Sutra Lankara and quotes the definition of great vehicle, and then the definition of the lesser vehicle. But continuing, right, when in Chodra says, since it is not the complete way of Mahayana, incompatible with the resolve to work for the benefit of others and so forth, it is established as the Shravaka's partial lower vehicle. Concerning such a distinction, according to the quote just mentioned, the distinction is made by whether the preliminary or actualized resolve for supreme awakening exists. Lord Atisha said that if the resolve for awakening is lacking, even when one enters the supreme mantra, there will be only the awakening of the Shravakas and Partheka Buddhas. If one possesses the resolve for awakening, achieving Buddhahood does not take a long time. So here, what Chodra seems to be saying is that while you might emphasize, while some might emphasize, oh, is it Hinayana, is it Mahayana, based on what result you achieve over there at the end. Here, following Atisha's emphasis, it says that if you don't have this resolve for awakening, resolve to become Buddha for the benefit of others, if you don't have this, even if you are practicing generation stage, completion stage, deity yoga, Mahamudra, the result of those practice will be according to how great your motivation is. If your motivation is still narrow, if you're still cultivating a narrow resolve, I want to do this because I want to be free myself. If that's your resolve, even if you practice Mahamudra, the extent of your realization is going to be limited. But if your resolve is great, vast, even to practice just mindfulness of breathing, the result is great. Yeah, so the resolve is important. So the resolve for awakening is the wish to obtain complete, perfect awakening for the sake of others. Furthermore, if he enjoys the resolve for awakening without the attitude of arhats and Partheka Buddhists, one must know such a vira, a hero, as one remaining continuously in equipoise, even if he engages in the five sense pleasures of sound, form, sound, scent, taste, and touch. And that is not all. If one's resolve for awakening decays, the Buddha has proclaimed that one's disciplined conduct will deteriorate, even though one's arhat, shravaka, and Partheka vows are pure. One's disciplined conduct means one's Mahayana conduct. Yeah? Moreover, if one has taken refuge in the three jewels and possesses the preliminary and actualized resolve of wishing to obtain Buddhahood for the sake of others, even though one still craves sense pleasures, one will be called a possessor of disciplined conduct. So this is really interesting. So this is to emphasize how powerful it is to have that resolve. So it says, if you have this resolve, even if your ability to control your senses is still weak, in the big picture, you are superior to someone who can control all their senses with very successful, but the mind is focused in the end still on self. So you could be very disciplined, right? You don't crave things anymore. You don't let your sight, sound, smell, taste, touch take you to places that cause suffering. But then if you're doing all of this, right, only with like, this is, I want to get out. I don't want this anymore. And no bodhicitta resolve. Then, in a way, you are stuck. In a way, you are stuck. It said that of the two scenarios, having that resolve, but yet still, temporarily, still falling victim to these hooks of the five senses. It says, as long as you don't lose that resolve, you have a way of coming back. And what you achieve will be greater than if you're just narrowly focused on myself. And also the Mahayana is Mahayana, again, because the resolve is there or not there. If the resolve is not there, as I mentioned last time, but you say or feel, naturally I like to help people. Naturally, I find it easy to be kind and compassionate. Well, that's good. That's good that naturally you are inclined that way. That means, that these seeds of virtue are strong in you. But don't let that become like don't let that become a reason to not see the necessity to really work on that resolve, to say, but yeah, even if I naturally kind of, some of us really, not out of pride or anything, some of us really feel like it's easy for me to think kindly of others. It's easy for me to be generous, and sometimes you even maybe don't know why, But here it's saying that it's not enough, That you are like that, it's good. You should rejoice and say, oh, good, I must have, created really good seeds and really good conditions. But you have to keep that resolve clear and says, the resolve for awakening is the wish to attain complete, perfect awakening for the sake of others. So, quoting Sanchayagata, if a bodhisattva, even though he indulges in the five sense pleasures, apprehends omniscience, taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, thinking I will achieve Buddhahood, this is to be known as skillful dwelling in the perfection of disciplined conduct. And then Chodra, after quoting this, says, if they wish to attain great awakening, even the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhists, and Arhats attain the supreme state by possessing the twofold resolve for great awakening, even if they have violated their respective vows. On the other hand, the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhists who do not possess the resolve for awakening are, concerning the impediments to attain complete awakening, worse off than the beings of the hell realms. So this is very strong, the words here. Then again, like we should not on this basis think, oh, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhists are worse than those in the hell realms. The point is not to talk about how inferior Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhists are, or those who pursue those paths, those limited paths. Really, the point is not to talk about how terrible they are. And if you think that's what's going on here, and if you have that attitude towards those whom you think are practicing Arhat and Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha paths, the narrow concern, and if you look at them like, oh, these people are worse than hell beings, you've missed the point. The point here is to emphasize how amazing it is to take the Great Way. How amazing it is to take the Great Way. So then a story is given, but just reference, so not told in full in this commentary. The corresponding story is like that of the Bodhisattva in the Ratnakutta Sutra. So Sobish on 135, it says, that quote, to be born in the hell is not an absolute hindrance to attaining Buddhahood, but the stages of the Shravakas and particular Buddhas are such absolute hindrances. Very strong, But here it says, out of context, this verse appears to be a vilification of the Hinayana. But here the intention is to emphasize the power of the resolve to be Buddha, how you enter the Mahayana. It shows that without that resolve, even if an arhat is far away from perfect awakening, whereas a being of the hell realm, even an arhat is far away from attaining the state of perfect Buddha, whereas a being in the hell realm who does cultivate this resolve is closer to Buddha, closest to the state of Buddha. Now, you have to understand, when it says here the arhat, it's not really talking about arhats. It's talking about those who are attracted to the idea that I will only work for my own well-being. And if you are, and it makes sense, again, this is not a sectarian or a biased statement. This is saying, right? Let's say you say, I want to go to, I don't know, I want to go to, I want to go to Chicago. And I don't want to go to New York City, right? Then you can't, this person cannot end up in New York City because they want to go to Chicago. So it might be two persons, right? In Dallas, Texas, saying, one saying, I want to go to Chicago. And the other person saying, I want to go to New York City, right? So it's saying here, even if you have vehicle, you have your own vehicle, reliable and everything, and you want to go to Chicago, so you go, then you get there, right? But because you absolutely don't want to go to New York City, then you will never get to New York City. But the other person, also in Dallas, Texas, says, I want to go to New York City, but he doesn't have a vehicle where he can, just get in and drive easily. He has to take, 4 buses, 1 train, hitchhike. But because he wants to go to New York City, he will get there. I mean, it's as simple as just saying that, So if your resolve is narrow, no matter how fancy your techniques are, it can only take you to that narrow, limited result. Because you adamantly don't want this other result, then no way you can get there. But if you want this greater result, even if right now you feel like I'm in the hell realms, guess what? You have a way to get there now because you have the resolve. Like, I really want to go to New York City. So even if you have to take 3 buses, hitchhike half the way, then jump on the train, then jump on the tow truck, you will get there. So this resolve, cultivating, making sure that this resolve is present, kind of in our minds, center stage is really important. Then the difference between mantra and the vehicle of characteristics, Sutrayana, is empowerment. Here, I want you to look at the notes provided, because in the Rinjangma, it says there are three general statements, three general positions among many of the people, the different teachers during Kyoba Rinpoche's time. Yeah? They have different ways of talking about how do you draw the line between general Mahayana, Sutrayana, aka Sutrayana, and secret mantra, aka Vajrayana. So Rinjangma says, one, secret mantra takes the result as the path. Because in the mantra vehicle, sentient beings are from the beginning Buddhas in perfect awakening. So we have all seen that, I'm sure, right? Oh, Vajrayana is taking the result as the path. So that's what, defines something as Vajrayana. Here the reply is, but in the sutra vehicle too, in the Dharma wheel of definitive truth, meaning the third collection of Buddha's teachings, the Buddha embryo, the Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature is taught to exist in all sentient beings from the beginning. So what he's saying here is like, actually, this idea of taking the result as the path, it's already found in the general Mahayana, in the teaching on Buddha nature. That is the result. So it says that cannot be the defining characteristic of secret mantra. Second, sutra and mantra are the long and short path, since in sutra, one proceeds on the path for 3 innumerable eons through the perfections, whereas in mantra, one becomes a Buddha, for example, in 1 or 7 lifetimes. Reply, bodhisattvas of the sutra vehicles, such as Sadaparudita or the merchant son Sudhana, have through great effort traversed the 10 bodhisattva stages in a single lifetime. The accomplishments of the mantra yogis Tilopa and Indrabhuti were no greater than these figures found in sutra. So basically the answer is no. Again, superficially we say, mantra is faster, sutra is slower. But here, Rinjangma says, no, there are also examples of how those practicing the sutra way got there really fast. Third, according to the sutra vehicle, sense objects are to be abandoned. But in mantra, one uses the blissful path. So some say, the difference between mantra and sutra is in mantra, you can enjoy everything and still achieve Buddha. You can have your cake and eat it too. Response. When Maitreya Nata was the Chakravartin Suvarna, universal monarch, he traversed the path without ever performing ascetic practices. On the other hand, mantra yogis such as Naropa and Milarepa underwent great hardships before they achieved realization. So here again, Rinjangma says, no, there is evidence in a sutra, emphasis on how Maitreya Natha, meaning the future Buddha, as the king, he practiced all the path without undergoing difficulties. Whereas, these Vajrayana figures like Naropa and Milarepa, look at their lives, filled with all kinds of painful experiences. So Rinjangma says, those three, even though as general statements, you could say, yeah, generally, it's faster. Generally, it's about taking the path, the result as the path. Generally, its attitude to sense pleasures is different, but they are not the real difference. But rather, it is empowerment. And when it comes to empowerment, right? I mean, we looked at that. What is empowerment? Again, not the superficial ritual of empowerment, but rather the Guru's guidance that leads us to maturing our realization that this mind itself is Buddha. This body itself is mandala of the day of the Buddhas. The next statement, which we will look at next time, I would say that is like a cautious statement. It's like after the last three statements we just looked at, that is about differentiating, right? The line between this and this, between this and this, between this and this, right? So especially this last one is between general Mahayana, called Sutrayana or called Paramitayana, and Vajrayana or Tantrayana or secret mantrayana, right? 123 says, but if either mantra, the vehicle of mantra, or the vehicle of characteristics, meaning the paramita, is lacking, complete awakening cannot be attained. So this is to say, actually, you have to practice both the practices given in the Sutrayana and the practices given in the Mantrayana. If you're lacking in either of the things taught inside in these two categories, in these two collections, then Buddhahood cannot be achieved. Complete Buddhahood. It's not saying that you cannot make progress if you only have one and not the other. You can make some progress, but for complete Buddha, those two are necessary. Then by extension, elsewhere, not just the things under Mahayana, the Hinayana trainings and practices are also necessary, indispensable. Where it is, you could say dispensable or not, is whether these are explicitly taught and practiced or not. There, I think there can be differences. But insofar as finally achieving Buddha, all the necessary conditions and qualities and muscles, so to say, that we have to develop through Hinayana training, Mahayana training, Vajrayana training, all of that necessarily needs to be developed. The difference is only whether they are explicitly highlighted or not. But as to whether those qualities and those strengths and those abilities, those skills needs to be cultivated or not? Absolutely, they need to be cultivated. And this is the kind of bigger point of statement 23. Then, of course, very detailed things are given in the commentary. But next time we'll look at 23 and 24 because then they are linked. More specifically, 24, 25 is it's about how should we understand the three yanas and the three vows. How do they relate to each other? Now, of course, we know singular, but how are they practiced as a singular, as one, chikpa, as singular, as same, as together? 23 and 24 will explain that. We'll expand on that. And 25, 23, 24 and 25, more specifically, will help us understand, how do we practice the three vows as a singular, rather than three things to choose from, but as a singular path. Any questions or comments before we end for today? If not, some announcements, which is, as you know, the 25th is Choko Durchen. Choko Durchen is the Buddha's turning of the wheel of Dharma. And that is for us in the Western Hemisphere. It will be this Friday. But of course, in Asia, it's 12 hours ahead of us, 12, 13 hours ahead of us. Then it also coincides with for Drigung people, the birthday of His Holiness the Drigung Kyabgun Chesang. And so there is a big effort to celebrate virtually. And so if you are inspired, if you have the time to participate in this international effort, I just shared on the Drigung Kagyu Foundation website the information. So it's going to be live stream on Facebook. The timings is basically 10:30 in Taiwan on Friday, 10:30 morning in Taiwan on Friday. But what that is Thursday night for us in the Americas at different times. So in New York time, it's also 10:30, but PM on Thursday night, which is Friday morning in Taiwan. For those of you in California, and it's like 8:30, I think. For those of you in Mexico City, it's 9:30. Yeah, so take note. Yeah. Let's see. No, California is 7:30. Sorry, I believe 3 hours. Yeah.
Hey, Han, sorry to interrupt you. You said it was going to be on the dragoonfoundation.org website, the information?
No. I said I posted the announcement. I shared the announcement on the website. Where it is going to be live casted is on some other website, some other Facebook account. And that information is on the Drigung Kagyu Foundation Facebook.
Got it, Facebook. Thank you.
Page. Yeah. So on the Facebook page, it'll tell you where. Unfortunately, I think in the very beautiful poster they prepared. I don't know. This is a design flaw. The Facebook page is not so explicit, but it's there. You just have to look. It's like IDKC2016 is the Facebook page account name. IDKC2016. But if you go to Facebook, Rigun Kagyu Foundation page, you'll see that. So that's Thursday night. Of course, Thursday, we also have Lojong class. Then Friday morning, we're going to practice Guru Puja, and which we do on Fridays now. But then particularly because of His Holiness's birthday, we're going to dedicate that practice to His Holiness. Okay, we end with dedication. Chanchu sem chorin punje ma ge ba nam ge gyuche ge ba nyam ba me ba gong ne gong du be wan shu.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.